Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the football betting series here on YouTube, Premier League edition. At the weekend of the 20th and 21st, we won 3 of our matches and were pushed in the final selection thanks to Manchester United's late collapse, which means our April record stands at 15 wins, 3 defeats, and just the 4 pushes, and a monthly total of £114.94. Adding that to the previous month's data, and our overall record stands at 72 wins, 24 defeats, with 11 pushes, and an overall profit of £456.19. There's a litany of midweek fixtures going on right now, so please be aware that some of the league positions, the form, and stats may have changed between now at the time of recording and by the time the games kick off at the weekend. I've got 3 games in today's episode, so without further ado, let's get into it. Our first selection sees 6th place Newcastle United playing host to 20th place and bottom of the table Sheffield United. And Newcastle, they picked up a convincing win in their most recent match against Spurs, winning 4-0. It was some clever gamesmanship from Eddie Howe as the Magpies allowed Tottenham to dominate the possession and hit them on the break. Most of the counters ended with a shot or a shot on target, and the players were clinical when they needed to be. 4 goals from just 5 efforts on target. This result means that Newcastle have now won back-to-back games and are unbeaten in their last 4 Premier League matches as they look to close in on 5th place this season. The away side, Sheffield United, they've really looked off the pace for the entirety of this season, and they're really not fit for purpose in the Premier League. However, losing to a fellow relegation candidate in Burnley by 5-1 is utterly shameful. This means that the Blades have not won in their last 9 league games, and whilst they're not mathematically relegated, it is only a matter of time. Head-to-head record, who can forget the most recent encounter as Newcastle put an 8-0 battering on Sheffield in the reverse fixture, 22 shots on target for the Magpies, with a combined XG of 3.92. It makes for pretty poor reading from the side destined for the Championship. Sheffield are all but relegated, and Newcastle's sole focus is on picking up more points to secure a 5th place finish and return to Europe next season. I think it's a pretty open and shut case. Newcastle to win, full stake in bet number 1. Bet number 2 sees 13th place Bournemouth playing host to 10th place Brighton. In Bournemouth's last game, they took a lead against a strong Aston Villa side, but ultimately fell, losing 3-1. This does mean that the Cherries have not won in their last 3 Premier League games, but with 42 points into this stage of the season, there are no fears of relegation. Brighton, the away side, despite taking 20 shots in their most recent game, only managed to find the back of the net due to a Burnley own goal and a misplaced back pass. This does mean that the Seagulls have not won in their last 4 Premier League games, and it's likely to be 5 following the midweek match against Manchester City. Head-to-head, the reverse game finished 3-1 to Brighton, overturning an early Bournemouth opening goal in what was quite a strong display. This result means that Brighton have won each of the last 3 encounters and have the possibility of doing the double over the Cherries this year. Free-flowing and fearless football is on the ticket for me, as neither side really wants to worry too much about defending. I think we're going to be looking at some positive, progressive football in this particular game. Over 2.5 goals have come in 4 of Bournemouth's last 5 games, including 3 of their last 4 away games. And with the away side Brighton, their over 2.5 goal record is more patchy. They've seen 3 or more goals scored in 50% of their last 6 games, but the underlying numbers suggest that there should have been more goals in that game. The reason we haven't seen more goals is down to some goalkeeping heroics or some non-clinical finishing. I'd expect to see a number of goals closer to their league average of 3.19. With all this in mind, over 2.5 goals seems like a fair price, but in light of Brighton's patchy goal-scoring record, I'll be backing this for just a half stake in bet number 2. Our third and final episode in today's episode sees 2nd place Arsenal playing host to 5th place Spurs. And Arsenal scored 2 goals at the end of each of their halves in their most recent game against Wolves, winning by 2-0 in what was a solid away performance. Their opponents Spurs have been given 15 days to prepare for today's game, which is a real advantage against an Arsenal side who have had to play 5 games in that period, both in the Champions League as well as the Premiership. You could argue that Spurs really needed that extra time on the training ground following their most recent loss by 4-0 at the hands of Newcastle. Spurs' most recent form has been pretty mixed, with 1 win, 1 loss and 1 draw in each of their last 3 games. When we look at the head-to-head record, the reverse fixture finished 2-2 at the Emirates. A fair result given the quality of chances, although Spurs would have probably felt more positive about their game, as they did equalise twice against their North London rivals. With all of this in mind, I'm going to be looking at goals once again. Arsenal have seen over 2.5 goals in only 1 of their 4 recent games. However, I'm putting this down to fixture congestion, as they had seen over 2.5 goals in their 9 matches before this stretch. For the away side Spurs, over 2.5 goals has come in 13 of their last 14 Premier League games. They love going forwards, but are pretty poor defensively. When we look at the head-to-head record, 4 of the last 5 encounters have seen over 2.5 goals, so I'm going to be looking for at least 3 goals in this game, once again for a full stake. There we go, 3 selections in today's episode, starting off with Newcastle versus Sheffield United. We're going to be backing the home team at very short odds of 1.25, £30 stake to return what should be a guaranteed £7.50. Moving on to the Sunday, Bournemouth Brighton over 2.5 goals, odds of 1 to 2, £15 stake to return 7.35. And closing off the weekend, Spurs versus Arsenal over 2.5 goals, odds of 1.47, £30 stake to return 14.10. So across our 3 selections, we're going to be risking £75 to hopefully pick up as much as £28.95. Will we do so? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to tune into next episode. But if you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below. And don't forget to check out the pinned comment for our continental picks as well. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.